Good. So I want to talk a little bit about the Buddha as recorded, and the Buddha's miracles. Often what we hear is the Buddha discouraged monks from making miracles, which he did, and he said the greatest miracle was teaching. So, however, having awe for the Buddha and being in admiration and impressed with the Buddha is very important. He wasn't a regular person. Often in the secularization of Buddha we get this idea that actually, you know, something very, very mundane and everyday daily practice and all this sort of thing. It's very true, but it is very good to cultivate this sense of a historical figure who was very capable of performing wonders, and often did, and often these miracles are dotted throughout the canon, throughout his life. Those clearly had these supernormal powers. So at one time, just from memory, even without research, deep lengthy research, just from my reading through the sutras, I was easily able to recall this some about 20 or 25 miracles that he was recorded as doing. So I thought I'd share that, because it's not always amplified, particularly in contemporary days. But it does help to, when you recall the Buddha, to have a sense of someone very unique and special. This is also within chanting and under the subject of faith in the Buddha. This is a quality called Buddha Nusati. It's reflecting on the qualities of the Buddha. So on one occasion, a Brahmin man saw a figure under a tree, and he had a cloth on his head. And actually it was the Buddha, but he didn't realise. The Buddha had a wet cloth and he was putting it on his head just to keep it cool. And he was meditating. And the Brahmin had offered some food to a shrine and was looking for a Brahmin priest to go and offer it to. It was kind of like that. So he went over and then he saw the Buddha. He said, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were a high-class Brahmin, you know, one of the real ones. I didn't realise you were just a lazy sort of hippie, you know, meditating under a tree." And the Buddha just kept looking at him and said, "But I've got this food here, and so I'll offer it to you anyway, just as soon as you're here." And the Buddha kept listening, and he said, "Yeah." And he said, and the man said, "Well, now you better chant something, I suppose, for good luck." You know, afterwards, the Buddha said that. So they then said to him, "I don't I don't ever give a blessing in reward as a teacher. No, I don't take a teacher's wage like this." So he said, "You better put that food in water where there's no living beings. It's been offered to a Buddha. It shouldn't be passed on to people now. And you don't know what you're dealing with," kind of thing like this." And the man said, "Oh, well, okay, then all right." He put it over to a pond where there weren't any living beings, put it in, and all this steam started hissing up over it, like he put hot flour that was cherry red into the water. And the man got a shock and was shaking. And he was frightened, and he looked back at the Buddha and he thought, "Oh no, what have I done?" So this is one account where the paranormal and supernatural phenomena started happening about the Buddha. I can only give you a little slice of all these stories, but this is one. When the Buddha sat down in front of 1,000 monks one time, he started to talk about the correct reason for accepting the robes, accepting the lodging, accepting the food under his name, and accepting the lodging under his name. And as he said it, a third of the monks started to cough up and vomit blood. They'd been taking the food without any respect or consideration. They were purely sort of fake monks just there to get a free lunch. Kind of thing like this. And they all started vomiting blood. And this is one case where the Buddha was able to have his paranormal powers. On several occasions the ground opened up and people who had severely abused the Buddha fell through down into the magma. One person faked pregnancy and accused the Buddha of it. His stepfather blocked his way when he was in charge of a long line of monks. The stepfather was drunk. It must have been early in the morning, so so he was already drunk from the whole night, and he stood his way and said, "You think you're powerful? I'm much older than you are. He was a stepfather, so he brought him up." So he was making a big point about, you know, you should respect your seniors, sort of thinking, "I'm much more powerful than you ever are." And the Buddha turned round and had a slight smile, and Ananda, his disciple, said to him, "Why?" He said, "Well, I have to say that in 7 days there's going to be an event here." And moved on and said, "What is it? What is it?" And the stepfather also came up and said, "What did he say?" And he said, "The earth is going to open up under your house." And he said, "I don't believe that." He said, "I'll show him up, I'm not afraid of it, and it's rubbish anyway, whatever I said happens around here, not what he said," type of thing. and barricaded himself in on the following Sunday in his upstairs room. And the story goes that he had it's called a state charger. It's a kind of very powerful horse in the stable. And it kicked in the door and started charging around the courtyard. And so most of the servants who were up there protecting the stepfather paid attention to this and opened the windows to see what was going on. And the father said, "Well, go and deal with the horse first, and then come back and protect me." So he'd had all the stairs upstairs taken away. They were miraculously back there again, and it all happened exactly like the Buddha said. The father came down to check the horse. The ground opened up, and he slipped down into it. And the other one was Devadatta, who was always trying to plot on the Buddha, his cousin, son of the stepfather, as well, on another occasion. Yeah, I mean, you want to raise the question: does it actually happen? There's actually many. If you look on the internet, there's lots of accounts where people do vanish into the ground. Sink wells is one of them, under certain people's houses, like that. The ground would just be being eroded over a long period of time. It's one way that happens. Another way is tornadoes. They make great holes down into the ground. I saw photos of these. One in Brazil. Quite amazing. But why does it land on just one house? Why me? Levitating. I've got a picture. Yeah, levitating was the story I told you of over the river, and radiating flames and water simultaneously, and then flipping it the other way, so he was radiating vertically water slightly down with the flames. That's the kind of depiction you consider. And there was another one. There's quite a funny story of levitating, where somebody was in his order for 3 months or so and was grumbling that he'd never even seen him do any magic at all, and he was getting fed up and went off to live in a park, a pleasure park, Pleasance Park. It's kind of like a very pleasant park, and was getting himself a bit of a reputation there, and grumbling and bitching about the bit behind the Buddha's back, saying, "I can't do nothing special, I was with him for ages, just like anyone else." And the Buddha went there and reclined in the middle of the park, and all the people and mentioned about this monk, and all the monks went to this. These monks, people went to the one I was telling you about, said, "Come quick, the Buddha's over there." And the monk couldn't move his bum, he just like stuck to the ground and couldn't move. How it goes on, and they said, "Come on quickly, the Buddha's out here, he's asking to see you," sort of thing. And he said, "Yeah, I'll be there in a minute." And he couldn't actually get up at all. And as he was doing everyone kept going one after another to do this. The Buddha started to levitate into the air like this, and his monk couldn't get up off his seat, and he went up to a huge height and into this display of radiating light in the air. It's very funny the way it's told. And then it's a whole sutta about the fruits of the monk's life. A bit like that. That's actually something else. There's a picture of a light phenomenon that's happened. It's we're in the middle, so please make yourself at home as Good, so continuing on. Another one was where a very devoted layperson had been arranging flowers for the king, and on sight of the Buddha coming was really overcome with devotion, and threw the flowers in the air over the Buddha to salute him, his aura. But the flowers stayed suspended in the air, and wherever he went on the arms around, they just stayed suspended in the air over him. And he walked into the town and through the city, and there were people calling the king to sort of like witness it and observe it. And he just walked along with this. And then when he got back to the monastery, that fell from the ground. There was like one that was in the suttas. Reading thoughts from present and far. Almost every other sutta the Buddha is doing this. Where he'll arise from his meditation in the morning and psychically scan the environment to see who is fruitful, who is ripe for teaching and fruition, who can observe, who can attain. And frequently then he'll go long distances to that place just to interrupt that person and see that they're ripe. It's almost like a farmer can look over precisely which fruits can be watered on that day and be plucked, or he'll be able to see that. For reading people's thoughts present and far. So also minor knowing others' past lives. This was a very powerful siddhi the Buddha had. to be able to see the cause and the effect stemming from multiple past lives. So this is also very different, compared with something like contemporary psychotherapy. People are always saying, well, how did your mother treat you? Do you still angry at your father? Do you still feel threatened by your mother? They're sort of like, but why were you born to those people? But Buddha would be able to see the cause before the cause before the cause. Like that. So someone was born and abused by their father. Yeah, but in a past life you were abusing him. You're his wife, and you used to sort of lock him up, and now this is sort of come back. It's not only just the previous life, it can be from 10 lives ago, it can be from 100 lives ago, it can be 1,000 lives ago. And the Buddha had this ability to penetrate cause and effect on this, and that's a very unique capacity. And his own past life, right, but something else. Knowing others' rebirths, often like a monk would die in agony or something of some sickness, and monks do this, but they do. And all the young monks would go to the Buddha and go, what happened? Where's he gone? Where's he gone? And the Buddha would be able to see that. There's quite an interesting story where one monk, before he was a Buddhist monk, he had the ability and he used to go around and people would give him a skull of someone. So like my grandma's skull, and he'd go, he'd tap him and he'd go, yeah, she's been reborn in, Tamil Nadu, could be living quite well, and be able to tell where they were reborn from just tapping on the skulls. Because all his life he was going around doing this. It was apparently something he could do, a little like the previous one. And so the Buddha called him after some time. He said, "Yeah, give me a skull." And he gave him the skull of an arahant, and he went. He couldn't find him. And he goes, "What?" He goes, "I've never come across this." He goes, "I can't find him." And he goes, "No more." He hadn't been reborn. So this is the difference between an arahant. They don't get reborn. It's one thing to even know there is any rebirth, another thing to know where they're reborn. But how do you stop it all going on? Once you've really got to that conclusion, maybe time's up by then. Maybe you're too old to do anything about it. But that was a very good one. Healing. The Buddha did a lot of healing actually, and sometimes it was more supernatural and more psychic, and sometimes it was a bit more ordinary. There's a famous story of a Suba.
A what?
Suba is the name of a bhikkhuni, and she was fully enlightened already. And even they're fully enlightened, they don't necessarily have supernatural powers, but they're prevented their next rebirth. They're enlightened from that respect. And she was prevented by a horny libertine. A horny sort of like, he was a goldsmith who blocked her way in the forest and was trying to get her to sort of like come and go and have a sort of, romp in the bushes sort of thing. And there's a very nice story about it. But in amongst it, she says to him, well, what is it that fascinates me about you? He says, your eyes. And he goes on at length with lots of poetry and lots of sort of romance about how beautiful her eyes are. And in the end she goes, really? And he goes, yes, but your eye, I'll die with it. And she goes, well, have the flipping thing then. And pulls out her eye. So he goes, now will you leave me alone? She was like, and he's going, and he's like horrified, and he goes, oh, sorry, I didn't realise you really got something else. No, sorry. And he went out of it. She went and saw the Buddha, and the eye came back by itself and was healed over. This is in one sutta. And in another story, a woman chopped up a bit of her flesh to give to. She had nothing to give, and she chopped up a little bit of her flesh and put it in the bowl. There's nothing else to give. When she went back to the Buddha, it healed over. A less dramatic one. Depicted here was where there was this was a story of a very arrogant monk. I'm just trying to wonder whether it was Channa. I'm not sure. But it was one of the monks who was very arrogant and showy, but then he became sort of well developed later on, but he also became very ill around that point, and because of the previous behaviour, none of the monks wanted anything to do with helping him. And so his body got very sweaty and clammy, his robes all got filthy, disgusting, he's like rolling in his own feces and urine, and he's really, really sick. And the Buddha went to him and cleaned him up and cared for him and said, whoever monks would attend me, he should attend the sick. So often Buddhism is kind of portrayed as not being into hospitals and hospice care, and what it is, very much that's whether this is emphasised or de-emphasised. So the compassionate aspect. Raising water level in a blocked up well until flooding points. This is when the Buddha was visiting an area that was heavily dominated by Brahmins who knew he was on his way. and they blocked up all the wells with clods of earth and clay, and blocked it up so he was on the way, so he wasn't going to be able to get anything to drink. And then they terrified all of the villagers to say, if you, they put lots of threats on them and say, don't offer them anything. And so the Buddha came and rested in a shade of a tree, and Brahmins and some servants were passing by, and one of the young servant girls couldn't help but rush forward and sort of like offer something that she had to the Buddha just from his aura. And when she came back, they basically beat her to death, I think, in the story. And then, it's not sequential, but that happened as part of the story later on. But they were sitting there in the shade, and Ananda went off and found all the blocked up wells, and then came back to the Buddha, and then the Buddha said, go and fetch me some water. And he said, I said before, it's all blocked up, you can't do it. He said, just do it as I say. And as Ananda was approaching the well, it basically burst, and all the water came flooding out, like a fountain, and that carried on flooding. And kept on carrying on flooding, and then actually flooded the whole village. It just kept going like that. So it almost like it raised the water table up psychically. There's one occasion where somebody is quibbling over whether to give him a lift in the boat because he hasn't got any coin like this, and the Buddha then says, I forget about it, and he floats over and lands on the other bank. People are quibbling over these tiny little things like coins and money, and they said, no, I'm only doing this as a sort of, for your sake, it's not for mine, I don't need it anyway, sort of levitate and flow over. Deva Brahma communication is almost every sutta, or so many of them start with Deva and Brahma showing up in the middle of the night and discussing and relating with the Buddha and requesting teachings from him. So he clearly had the ability to be able to do this, and also to transport himself into, arrive at a Deva realm, and then suspend there and stay there and communicate with them, leaving either his physical body at the grounds to be watched over, or a holographic replica. I think it's the first one. Disappearing and reappearing elsewhere is described as doing quite frequently. Halting a crazed, charged, drunken elephant. So this was Devadatta, his cousin, jealous cousin, has got an already very aggressive elephant drunk and sent it into a narrow channeled street. There was nowhere to get out, and the Buddha using a chant and metta, loving kindness, and sent out with using the hands in this direction and grounded the elephant. It just tumbled down. There was also a story about a baby that had been dropped in the street, and the mother was out of her mind, screaming that it was going to trample the child, which it didn't as well. There's lots of early descriptions before the Buddha became famous and he was wandering in the jungles. Semi-Bodhi's advert, or just after Buddhahood, when he was spent all his time communicating with animals as well. And he said he had no trouble with any of them, with the leopards, lions, elephants, and so on. He had great sort of empathetic communication with the animals. These are depictions of the elephant about to trample the child. I was telling some people the other day, I took a copy of that chant and an elephant listened to it. And I was in Sri Lanka. I was up in an upstairs building, and it just charged someone there was a JCB digger, and there was a man sitting in the cab with his feet up, and he started shouting abuse at this elephant as it was coming around into this temple where it ate from the bins every day. And he started shouting, and it charged the JCB, and it was like, it just ran for his life out of it, and the elephant stopped and it came out to eat. And I stayed up in an upstairs room, and I was just called this chant as it went past, and it just stopped and just leant against the post, and his ear came round. I listened about 15 minutes just listening to it. A bit like that. That is a lovely picture. It's a bit like the elephant orphan.
Yeah.
This is what Tara showed me, it got me onto it. There's an African project, Sheldrick.
David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust.
It's beautiful. I mean, they're rescuing elephants or elephant orphans, often where poachers have just destroyed the parents and they just run off. So they're just in the wild alone. They turn up in villages, like out of their minds, and they take care of them. And you can sponsor them.
Minimum of $50 a year.
Yeah, like that, and it's a great gift to give to other people, or encouragement, or something like this. Making vivid apparitions. This is something that the Buddha did as an educational tool. There was a very beautiful, sort of beauty queen-esque, carnival queen type lady whose fiance had joined the order, whose mother had joined the order, brother had joined the order, and she was left alone. So she was like thinking, she actually became a bhikkhuni, but just kind of like to join in the club. She had no interest in meditating or anything else. Didn't want to just be left alone. All of them had gone into becoming monks and nuns, and the Buddha, knowing her mind, like she didn't want to see the Buddha because she heard that he just talked about beauty is an illusion and so on and all that stuff. She was quite worried about him. So she came and just sort of stayed at the back, swooping up and sort of like keeping out of the way. And he made this apparition of a beautiful servant girl serving water and cleaning up and tidying around. So, so he does have some very pretty young ladies around, so that's not too bad. And as she watched him, this servant girl, she blinked and she looked a bit older than I thought she was, and then she's got and she was aging before her. Telepathically, he made the apparition age and age and age until she couldn't believe it. She was getting very old and like silver hair, and get older and older and older until she was crumpled and aged and like an old raisin, and then rolling around in her own feces, couldn't take care of herself, and she realised her own fate. Radiating colours and light frequently. In fact, he was usually doing this. There's always seemed to be saying these layers of 6 colours that were always radiating. He just had this deep sense. He tried to look at his body, you couldn't see. You could just see this radiance of colours, and he only described his physical body as this rotting body. So it's almost like the name of the Dhammakaya. There's these 6 layers of light. Sometimes he used it also. There's a story in the Dhammapada of a bunch of ladies who came drunk to the temple and started dancing on all the tables, and the Buddha just went silent and radiated enormous blue light, and it shocked them so much, they all saw it, that they all went subdued, and then he also vanished and appeared. The story is that he appeared on Mount Sinero, the mountain that we saw earlier on, and just made a great big, illuminated the whole sky with light, and then reappeared again. But it stunned them into seriousness, not to play with it. And the shock to them was great enough to get sincere enough and go on to enlightenment. Future premonitions, the Buddha was always doing. He knew, he was able to tell people's future, things that would happen in 7 days, whether they happened, so how long people had to live, many things along those lines, future premonitions, world cycles, many things. The causing of rain, in one of the Rakkhita Sutta, Vesali was plague-ridden, and there had been a drought for months and months and months on end. Corpses were rotting in the street, and plague was everywhere. So it was just a vermin-infested mess, and no one knew what to do about it. It was going worse and worse, and they decided to invite the Buddha. He sent Ananda ahead, who walked the whole ramparts, chanting the Ratana Sutta, the discourse on jewels, on the Buddha, Dharma and the Sangha, to get everyone ready. And they got ready. When the Buddha came, he crossed over a river, and when his first footstep touched the riverbank, there was a torrential rainfall from a rain cloud that towered above the city, and just carried on torrentially raining for days on end, which also enabled them to clear. The rivers swelled back up again. They were able to clear all the streets and clean. And then it became a change. And he described that one of the causes, almost if you say a city's got an aura, one of the causes of this was they had honoured the devas and the ancestors, and they'd become spiritually bereft or spiritually indebted, negative. There was so much negative energy on that his arrival there and the changing of their habits and the taking on all of the practice begun there. The causing of the rain on a dry plateau is often a description of the way that when the Buddha came, his teaching was like torrential rain. So a little bit about the Buddha's qualities.